Ladies and gents, thanks very much for coming back. Hope you've had a good lunch. We are going to start the afternoon session with a brokers panel. I've imaginatively titled it Broking for Gold.
You're based in London. Oh, you're based in London.
We've got a very esteemed panel up here with us who need very little introduction. I will give them a quick introduction, though, just for formality's sake. Mr. Jamie Edmiston, CEO Edmiston. Will Christie, founder of Christie Yachts. Jaap Minnema, sales broker at Fraser. And Cecil-Wright from Cecil-Wright and Partners. Hello, gents. Thanks very much for turning up. Good to see you. There's any number of places we could start with this selection of luminaries on the stage. How about we start with this? What's the white hot topic in brokerage that's bugging you currently? Where should we go first? Chris?
Oh, well, goodness me, white hot. No, I don't know that it's white hot, but it's a continual bugbear of mine is the disparity in the way that people go about valuing yachts. Drives me crazy that there is so much data and there's so much available to us, and yet there's a massive disparity in what people think a boat is worth. And I think it can be fairly easily ironed out. I think people shouldn't be quite so necessarily greedy in trying to hoover up everything and trying to list hundreds of yachts. They should really drill down into the value of a yacht and then and market it accordingly.
JJ, would you want to go next?
Yeah, no, it's an eternal thing. It's everybody wants the best price for the boat, the highest price, and when they buying, they want to have the lowest price, and then there's a big fluctuation about it. So I fully agree with Chris.
Yeah, I think the same. I think you see so many boats come to the market at totally unrealistic prices, and I think as an industry, it's a big problem because it potentially puts off new people coming in. They see these boats which take years to sell because they were mispriced from the outset.
It causes huge distrust. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know,
and then they think, is that really a market I want to get into? If I want to sell one day, is it going to really take me that long to get rid of it? So I think, yeah, a bit more honesty. But it comes from the fact that when someone wants to sell, unless they've already got a really trusting relationship with a particular broker, they do go and run a bit of a beauty parade. And the one way that some brokers attract them to go with them is by saying, we can get you 60, when actually you might be lucky to get 35. So it's a bit frustrating to those that are honest with owners that you lose out on that basis alone.
I was going to say, just playing devil's advocate, aren't you as the broking fraternity slightly responsible for that because you are kind of setting those prices?
Yeah, absolutely, but we can't control what someone else says in a pitch. We can just say what we can say, listen, yes, don't get distracted by all those other asking prices of comparable boats, but they haven't sold for the last 3 years, so that would indicate that the asking prices are wrong. But some owners just get attracted to that big number that is kind of, in inverted commas, promised to them.
Okay. Any other, Jamie, thoughts on white-hot topics that are...
I mean, I pretty much agree. I mean, I don't know if it's a white-hot topic, but I agree with what these guys have said.
You're not here to agree with everyone.
I do. Trust me, I wouldn't say I agreed if I didn't, but it is true. The reality of it is the most important matter is, or price is what the boat sells for. And data doesn't lie, I think Chris said at the beginning. You can look at the data, you can see what boats are worth. Some people think their yacht's worth more because their wife did the interior, and invariably it's worth less.
It's a very good point, that, Jamie. Actually, I think the big disparity comes with the fact that this is a very emotional purchase, buying a boat. It's so emotional. And at the beginning of that love affair, somebody comes along, they think they've made a really nice deal on the boat, then they spend fortunes on the interior, sometimes, as Jamie says, badly. Sometimes well, but whatever they do, they spend fortunes on the interior, and then they spend 3 or 5 years really maintaining the boat beautifully, and they think they're actually they remember every penny they've spent on the boat, thinking that the boat's going up in value. So when they come to sell it, and somebody tells them it's worth double what they paid for it, they say, yeah, I knew that. But in fact, it's worth the same as they paid for it, maybe a little less. I mean, not taking into account the inflation, obviously. But so our job is to really get them to, both the buyers and the sellers to understand. Because a buyer comes in, of course, and he's now absolutely current with the market today. He doesn't care about what you spent on it or what you spent on the interior, that ghastly interior. So really, it's just a case of bringing the two together, but it's much, much more difficult if you start with these incredibly high prices that you really can't trust.
Any other white-hot topics while we're on that subject?
What do you think the white-hot topic is? You must have had some briefing from someone.
I'm here to ask you questions. I mean, picking up on Chris's point there about the role that the broker plays in bringing the parties together to get the deal done, is the role of a broker as key as it was?
Personally, I think the role of a broker is critical. One of the things that we've discussed, I think, previously on one of these panels is the barriers to entry to be a yacht broker are low. Any idiot can be a yacht broker, and plenty of idiots are. It's a business card and a mobile phone, and then you can be a yacht broker. The barriers to success are very, very high, i.e. people who are regularly doing deals, who understand the market, who have the relationships within the industry, so that if you pick up a phone and I call Chris, I say, I've got someone who wants to buy a boat, Chris will take it seriously. These are the things which are very, very valuable, and that takes a lot of time. It's often very, very poorly valued by the clients, because they say, well, hang on, why should I pay you so much money? Which invariably isn't as much money as people think, unfortunately. But the reality of it is the good brokers have got 20 years plus of knowledge, relationships, data, anecdotal evidence. They understand the market, and that is hugely, hugely valuable. And you occasionally hear people saying, well, I don't want to pay a broker because I'll save myself, some money. In my view, that is poorly considered.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it last year that and someone alluded to it before, but we're dealing with emotions here. It's an emotional purchase, and I think I said last year, nobody needs to buy a boat, but it'd be better to have a boat, of course. I said that last year, but it can be very delicate, and I think good brokers can work together. If you have a good trusting relationship and you're acting for a buyer with a central agent, you can kind of work together to make the deal happen. A good central agent will tell you, Will, you need to do this to get this deal across the line. They know the seller, I know the buyer, or vice versa. So if you work together as a team, you can make deals happen. But that's you have to realize the brokerage market is a collaborative market. We are all competitors, but actually the top brokers all work very closely together. They represent their clients' interests, but they understand that by working together, we create transactions in the industry, which kind of the rest of the industry really feeds off, ultimately.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that, Will. And I'd just add that, last year, again, we talked about disrupting in this market and talked about, relationship-driven business. And I think we all agree it's a relationship-driven business. But right now, what we're seeing is that because there's so much AI and there's so much information, there's so much data available to basically anybody who goes on the internet, you can find the name of an owner, you can find the size of a boat, you can get the full technical specification, you get all the details, you even know where it is, like by the minute. So there's no information that you can't find out about a boat that's basically openly available on the market. So we're finding some of our clients now are saying, look, I don't want it to be listed on the market. I don't want you to put it on your website or on Boat International or wherever else you might want to list it for sale. I just want you to talk very discreetly to your top clients to see whether they're interested in chartering it or buying it. And people have talked about this as, the whisper market. People have talked about boats being off-market. I don't like off-market because it's so disingenuous. It's either on the market or it's off the market. So we're now calling it not publicly listed. And these are boats that are basically only available for the four of us and our other esteemed colleagues to talk about on the telephone, the old way, analog way, and distribute information in that way. So it keeps the ultimate discretion and the ultimate privacy of the deal off the World Wide Web.
We keep hearing about, whether it's true or not, but it's sort of a new generation of owners. Do they do do they still operate in the same way as the old generation? I mean, we talk about here about it being relationship driven, but are they the same? Are the new generation of owners, do they operate like that, or do they operate slightly differently?
What do you consider new generation of clients? What is new generation? How do you measure?
Just younger. I mean, younger people do things differently.
Yeah, but
Anecdotally, you hear they don't
has
pick the
been
phone
the
up.
case. There have always been young buyers and older buyers and traditional buyers and more modern buyers. It's the same as everybody talks about trends in our business. Well, there are no trends because it's too small of a number. A couple of Explorer yachts will be sold, and all of a sudden everybody's stumbling over each other, saying, "Oh yeah, the Explorer market or the new generation want to explore." No, the new generation does exactly the same thing as the old generation. They sit, they go, they do the milk run in the Met and party like been done for generations. That's it. There is no this new generation. I personally, maybe because I'm old generation, but I really don't believe that much. It's a shift of buyers, yeah, sure, and different buyers with different needs, and that's what we've always been doing.
Yeah, I think you're talking about also how do young people do, how do they preside over a transaction? But I think Chris was alluding to the fact there's so much information now, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because everything looks good on the internet. All these boats were photographed on the first day they got delivered. And so there's so much information. It's, as a buyer, making sense of that. And that's what we can do. We can tell them the difference. Why should you pay a premium for that boat over this boat? What should you actually pay? And that's, forget about all the asking prices. What should you pay? What's the real value of that boat? And I think that's the value we can add. Although I'm glad that brokers are so well regarded in this room. Oh, we are now more important. Oh, we are? No. Oh, the voting swung. We've had about 3 votes. Are we as important to what? Yes. Oh, that's good. We'll have to find the no's later.
But it's like with data, there's so much data, but data is worthless if you don't put it in perspective, and that's what brokers doing. They put the correct data in perspective and explain to a client what it is and what it is about. It's the same what we had earlier in a discussion before about surveys. It's the same thing. If you throw a survey report of 50 pages with 500 photos on the desk of an owner, it scares the shit out of them. But if you sit with them and you explain what it is, put things in perspective, then you have an educated answer and an educated decision. And that's what brokers doing. And that's what takes, well, it took me 25 years to sell boats consistently. And the guys here are at least as long as I'm in the business. And if you have young people, that's fine. And if you have you train them, and but there's no substitute for experience. So that's why I think brokers are very important.
We've talked about relationships and how important those are with clients, but it strikes me that you need a certain alpha tendencies, let's say, to be a top broker, maybe. How do you manage those relationships when you're sort of speaking to competitors, the other side of the deal, for example?
I think it's a very unusual business, this, that we're all rivals, obviously. We're all pitching for the same clients, well, very often. But you're also friends and colleagues, and this is a unique industry in many ways where in the morning we can be pitching against one of these guys, and in the afternoon we can be having a conversation about a deal we're doing together. And invariably, yes, we're rivals. Yes, of course, on occasion you lose out to somebody that you're annoyed about. But generally speaking, I think there actually is a pretty high degree of respect and collaboration, and indeed friendship, amongst the leading brokers. And I guess as you get a little bit older and a little bit more experience, it's a little bit easier to live with the losses than it was earlier on in your career. But invariably, I think the people who are successful in this industry generally have good relationships, because you quite simply could not be successful if you didn't have good collaborative relationships with your colleagues.
That's exactly, I totally agree. I mean, Jamie, I'm well known to have worked with Jamie's dad, Nick, for 25 5 years or so. Will and I worked at the same business for 15 years. We've all worked in businesses together. Actually, at our end of the business, we're all good friends. So that really does help. But we talk about a relationship business. That's part of the relationships. It's also the relationships with the shipyards, with the CEOs, with the designers, with insurance people, with finance people, with even port captains, yacht engineers. All these people, the whole ecosystem of yachting is built on relationships. And I think as a salesman, that's kind of your key job is to maintain those relationships. And then, you can't be, this is what I've always said, you can't have thousands and thousands of relationships. You just have to have a key few relationships. And that means you can deliver value for those key few people. And the deals are big enough and the money's big enough that allows you to make a nice living, so that's fine.
Will, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the vast majority of other brokers at the top end I've got a lot of respect for, because I think that it's all based on mutual respect. And I think that we all kind of help each other because it kind of, what goes around comes around. So there are lots of people I share information with, not because they work in the same company as me, but because I know they'll share that information back. And talking about these, not off-market, we call them non-publicly listed boats.
Not publicly listed.
There you go. There's a new
He's
term
in marketing.
today. Yeah, okay, we like this one. But I think it's those kind of things, as if you had this secret listing, who can you pick up the phone to and know that you're not going to lose the confidential nature of it? Because actually you kind of create a premium. If you offer a boat to a client, say you're one of very few people who know about this, that's something really special. And there are a few brokers I trust.
Often you say that, and the guy goes, "Yeah, but Will Christie called me this morning about that, and so did Chris Cecil-Wright." I mean,
it can.
That is one of the problems.
But I'm saying there is a small group at the top end of the market, I think, that do collaborate a lot and share information a lot to each other's mutual benefit. And so when any of the guys on these panels sell a boat, I'm genuinely happy because I want to see a vibrant market. If nothing's happening, that's really worrying for all of us. It's sometimes frustrating to see one broker just smashing out the park day after day. But you've got to remember, everyone goes through peaks and troughs. But if nothing's happening, then we all really need to worry. So we want liquidity.
And further to that, we haven't seen a big shift in boats being sold by all young brokers from small companies or just startups, or this new generation clients, and this also talks about this new generation of brokers. I haven't seen, you see a few deals and good for them, but the majority is still done by people who are matured in the business.
Okay, love that. Let's slightly change tack. Everyone accepts that the price of new builds is going up. How do you think that will affect the brokerage market? Will, do you want to?
Yeah, I think we spoke about this the other day. I think there's been this huge inflation in new build prices, which is not the shipyard's fault. It's all through, it's the labour rates which have gone up so much. And that's kind of cooked in now. I think a lot of people are saying, I'll stand back and the shipyards will suddenly reduce their prices. But I don't think they can. About 70% of these custom new builds is labour alone, and they have unions and all sorts of things. So they might be able to play with their margin a bit, but I think those prices are to a certain extent baked in now. So we've never seen this kind of rise in costs, and our market's always been very, very slow to react because of the illiquidity of it. But I do think that, and I would say this, but I do think that right now, if you can buy a recently built kind of good quality yacht, there may be value in that, because I think that the brokerage prices will have to come up to reflect this, because I think a lot of owners will simply not sell now. They'll look at the price, what it costs to replace their boat with a larger boat, and they'll go, you know what, I'm probably just going to keep my boat. And that will just become a supply-demand kind of factor.
Yeah, it's all part of the equation. It's all part of the pricing equation that we talked about before. I mean, new build prices, availability at shipyards, scarcity of current new builds, scarcity of really good quality boats at the top end of the market, drive prices. That's part of the equation. Then when you look at the individual yacht, of course, you need to look at how it's been maintained, and you need to look at the actual, whether it's still obsolete, or whether it's now obsolete through its design, or lots and lots of other factors. But certainly the price of new builds does drive the price of second-hand boats. But It's only part of the equation.
Jamie, any further thoughts on that?
I mean, for sure, the price of new builds has escalated dramatically. And, you're now looking, for these very big yachts, you can be in the hundreds of millions of euros. Having said that, there is still appears to be strong demand for new builds. So, 15 years ago, it was relatively unusual for someone to have a net worth of over 10 billion. There were a few people, but it was relatively rare. Today, there are 30 people who are worth more than 50 billion. And therefore, there are still people who have the appetite and the capability to buy these very large, expensive yachts. But I think echoing some of the comments of the others is that, of course, when people are selling their yachts, they do look and say, if I want to replace this or build a new one, what's it going to cost? And those numbers can be high.
JJ, any further to add?
There is not much to add. It's they know what they're talking about.
Okay. I mean, talking about new builds, how important is a broker's role in the whole new build process?
I've got a fairly strong view on this.
Excellent. Let's hear
I do
it.
actually think it's. I mean, the broker again is a relationship here. Whether it's a broker or, whether it's in some cases a captain or whether it's in some cases an owner's representative or the head of some family office, there has to be a relationship with the person making the acquisition, because that person almost certainly has not spent the last 30 years looking in and trading in the yacht market. So almost certainly doesn't have all the information at his fingertips and can't make a good decision. So, the broker's job here is to gently bring the buyer to the table and try to extract from that person exactly what their aspirations are, what their appetites are, what their budget is, and then using the relationships and using past experience of working with shipyards, guide that person to roughly the right place. Because otherwise it's a total minefield. All the advertising says, we build the best yachts. Yeah. That's what all advertising says. So how else do you sift through the information?
I think another thing that brokers can add to the process, and I've seen quite a few boats that have been built clearly by a client who's gone direct to the shipyard, and then when it comes to resale, you go, oh, they're going to take a real haircut on this. Because I think brokers, we spend the whole year looking at boats and looking at resale value. And you can say to the client, I know you really want this, but it's incredibly unique. You realize when you come to resale, this might cost you 40% on day one in depreciation. And I think that whenever you're building a boat, you have to think, one day I'm going to have to sell this thing. So whilst you want exactly what's right for you and your family, bear that in mind and you can help navigate that. And that alone can add a lot of value to the process.
Jamie, anything to add?
I think, it depends which shipyards we're working with, but, we work with a number of the leading shipyards, and I think if you add value, they're happy to have you involved. These guys have already made comments about, knowing what's going to sell down the line, understanding relationships, understanding what matters and what doesn't matter. And also there are moments in time when the personal relationship with the owner and indeed the personal relationship with perhaps the guys running the shipyard, that unique thing can be hugely powerful in unlocking, a problem. And there are regularly problems when you're building yachts. And I think quite often, just speaking from personal experience, been a couple of situations that I've been able to resolve based on a human condition of talking to people. And sometimes you need that. It's not just engineers and clever people arguing with each other. You need that personal touch to say, look, this is what I think you should do. This is sensible. This is fair. And it can unlock a huge drama. And that, I think, is sort of going back to the theme of the day, relationships.
Yeah, and further to that, you need to identify where a problem is coming. You need to understand. An owner who has never bought built a boat in his life, it's a very complex thing to do. If you have a lot of experience in building new boats, you have project management, you have done 20 boats, or your company has done 20 boats, so you know what you're talking about, and that is what to explain. It's not only the technical part of it, but explaining, again, what we mentioned before, explaining again to an owner what the problem really is. and not what an engineer think it is or what someone from the shipyard think it is, but to identify the problems before they become problems.
Could I also add that I don't think it's necessarily, it's not just a cut, you know, we don't put a page of advertising in a magazine and expect a new owner to call us up and say, will you help me build a new boat? I mean, it's not how it works. You know, almost certainly somebody that, a broker that deals or represents a new build buyer will have been involved with him and his family for 1 or 2 purchases beforehand. So certainly 1, almost certainly. Or maybe a lot of charter, but we'll know the family, know what they want. We'll be really ingrained with them. They will be the yachting person for that family. So, you know, whether we're wanted by the shipyards or not, I think the point is that, you know, if there's a strong relationship with a billionaire buyer who wants to build a 100-meter yacht, then there's a place for you.
Okay. President Trump wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. Apparently, I've not read it. Presumably it was about this thing, no idea, but sum up in a few kind of lines what's your art of the deal, Jamie?
Well, one of the things, our business is a little bit different. I mean, all of our businesses are slightly different, but they have a commonality in as much as there's a lot of experience here. I mean, we're a slightly bigger business, so we have a larger team of brokers who, you know, work at different offices around the world. One of the things I say to our guys, which is really important, is know when you are the wrong person to deal with this client. You know, you don't always click. And sometimes it's quite wise to be able to say, look, I'm probably not the right guy. They should be dealing with Simon or with Alex or with Cornelius, whoever it might be. That's a key part of it. Look, the other thing goes back, you know, you talked about the kind of personality that works in this industry. The kind of personality that works in this industry sitting on this stage is you've got to be very driven. You've got to be good with people. You've got to be able to live with disappointment. And you've got to have relationships with all of the key people that matter. And if you can do that, then you can be successful. And I think the number of successful brokers in this industry is relatively few. We can probably count on 2 hands the guys in this industry who are regularly doing big deals.
Will?
I think you've got to work out very quickly, and that's just about the power of relationships and how quickly you can engage people, is what does the person want? Sometimes they don't even know what they want. So it's asking the questions to find out what they want and introducing ideas they may have not even thought of. And I think Jamie said, like, also know, I think one real strength is knowing what you're not good at. But I think when you get to this stage of experience industry, if I don't know someone, if I don't know something, I know exactly who to call to find out. So it's also knowing who to introduce the process at what point to facilitate the deal. And I think that's why clients deal with brokers, because they know that they've got the right address book. We don't do everything. We're not surveyors, we're not designers, but we know the right person, the right fit for the client and the transaction or whatever it might be. And a lot of the stuff we do isn't paid for. It's just maintaining the relationship. You want to be the person, they think yachts, they think Jamie, Will, JJ, Chris, whatever your client. I'll ring up Will, he'll know who the right guy is. And that's just about maintaining the relationship.
JJ, what's your art of the deal?
Well, it's a combination of endurance and resilience, I guess. So that's what we do all the time, adapting to the different situations and you know what was mentioned earlier. No one needs a boat, so we need to adapt and see how we can facilitate the wishes of people that sometimes have no clue what they want. That is to get that done.
Okay, and Chris?
Yeah, I think the answer is really to get to the place where somebody says, yes, I want to do that. Because you know, I see people getting really close to it, and then they don't have quite the confidence to say, right, pull the trigger, and they think, oh, how about this, or how about that? You know, the answer is you've got to really get to the place where the buyer says, yeah, I want to do that. And it means that if you're always focusing on that, then all the drivers around it are in the same direction. You know, spending time on the relationship, spending time on finding out exactly what they want, spending time on research, making sure they have the right information to make a good decision. But when they get to the decision, giving them the confidence to say, yep, that's the right decision, let's do it. And so many people, when they get to that point, they shy away from it. That's what we're constantly pressing. When you get to that place, just take the deal.
Beautiful. One more quick one from me then. If you could wield your magic wand, what's the one thing that you would change about being a yacht broker? Jamie. Okay.
Okay. The thing that I would change about yacht broking, I think there's probably two things I'd change. One, I see a lot of people, Jamie, I'm not pointing at your business, but I'm pointing at the bigger businesses. They list lots and lots of yachts. And for me, that's advertising. That's not broking. Broking is representing specific yachts and representing them to your colleagues in the industry as well as your clients really well, really getting to know the boat, say adding value. That's broking. So the one thing I'd say, maximum amount of listings that you can have per broker is 3 or 5 or something like that. And the second thing I would do is I would just smack anybody that lists their boat too highly in price without any knowledge.
And that's exactly another point that should be changed. Is I see it on the screen. Someone was asking about should it be regulated or obtain a diploma or something like that. Yeah, it's the entry of becoming a broker is a little too low in my opinion, and that's why you see people get badly advised. They they step into boats that are not really good for them. They get disappointed, get out of boating. Everybody screwed them, and they're not happy. We are in the pleasure yacht business. It's pleasure only. That's the only reason why these things exist. So make it a good and a pleasurable experience.
To that point then, that question there, should there be some sort of diploma or qualification?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not against it. I don't know who's going to regulate that because that's another thing. But I think young brokers should be guided by more experienced brokers who open up their books and open up their experience and avoid that young brokers fall in the same traps that we have been falling in 20 years ago. So it should be regulated. I don't have the idea how to do that, but yeah, it's definitely. If in Holland you can't be a broker without a license or an exam, so I don't see why it's worldwide. Everybody can put a sign on the door saying I'm a broker now.
Will, a magic wand for you? What would you do?
Yeah, I think that's one of my big frustrations. I think we see some people acting dishonestly, ill-advised, bad advice, which puts people off the industry. Like brokers have a bad name, but I think it's caused by a minority, and they seem to be able to carry on acting in this industry, which I find really frustrating, because I think there is a big disparity between the good brokers and the bad brokers, and there's a big disparity between the brokers who've got experience, who can add value to the process, and those that just say, I'm a yacht broker and therefore I should get my percentage. I always think a good broker earns their fee and more. And if you're not, then you're not doing your job. But I think I've never not earned a fee. I've always saved my clients more than the fee in what I've added in value. But not all brokers do that. And that's when the resentment builds, probably from other parts of the industry as well. And that's disappointing to me. How we resolve it and how we regulate it, I don't know. That's the difficulty. Because the good people don't have time to do it. That's the problem. No disrespect, and I doff my hat to people on certain committees and stuff, but the really, really top guys aren't on that because they just don't have the time because they're busy running companies, busy doing deals. But they're the kind of people we need to have more of a voice, but it's just a bit difficult.
Jamie, you bought yourself some time there, so it's come back to you now.
Probably, and there's many things you'd like to change. Probably pricing, I think that's one of the key ones, is price yachts properly. And, I think quite often you see yachts listed and you think, why on earth is it they've put a price that's so far out of kilter with what the data would say. There's lots of other, the diploma. It would be good to have a diploma, but as Jan said, who the hell's going to regulate it? and I sort of think in some ways there is an invisible diploma, i.e. we know who the good people are. So whilst I wouldn't necessarily do business with someone just because they've got yacht broking diploma after their name. I'm not even sure any of us on the stage would pass the exam if there was one.
I don't think we would, and I'm not absolutely not against the diploma, but if you're sitting up in front of a buyer, a billionaire man or woman who has spent 30 years building an incredible business for which they're now worth their billions, they pretty quickly get the measure of you. It's pretty self-regulating. You can't sit up there and not say regulator. You can't sit in front of a billionaire and blag it because they just see straight through you, and then you don't end up doing a deal. So in that way, I think it does self-regulate. But a diploma would be probably a good way to start, so people understand the terminology.
We put a question up there. I think there's one person voted yes. I imagine that will change quite quickly. Okay, well, we'll open it up to questions. You know where this is going to end, don't you? What are the other questions? Let's open. Let's get Slido back up. Let's take this one. They're all anonymous. Let's have some names on these questions. These points are mainly pertinent for existing stock. I think to a point we were talking about earlier. How do brokers justify / earn their 5% introduction fee for new builds?
Oh, well, that's quite an easy one. Because, we spend our time working on our very specific clients, and again, fewer clients is what my little motto is. If I'm going to spend 20 years with a client, looking after him and getting to a place where that guy or woman agrees that I'm the right person to look after them in the shipyard, I can pretty much direct it wherever I want to go. And yes, it is a payday, but it's 20 years in the making for a payday. And that particular 5% actually is not very big compared to doing a second-hand deal which has taken 3 months. This is leading somebody for 20 years and then spending 5 years holding their hand all the way through the process with all the aggro and all the other people you have to employ on the way and everybody else that needs paying on the way from the project managers and build teams and all those other things. So actually, building boats as a broker, as the broker in charge, is not necessarily the biggest money spinner that you might think. Divide it over 5 years, that's 1% a year. Divide it by the number of people on the team that need to be involved. It's not a huge number, not compared to doing regular turnover of brokerage deals.
Anyone else want to chip in on that?
Well, I go back to the value added, because are you going to save them more than 5%? If you have, then you've earned that fee. That's the way I look at it, and there are many ways in which we can do that. Because as soon as you sign a contract with a shipyard, they've got you by the proverbials. So all the work that happens before a contract is signed is where you really need to focus.
Yeah.
I don't want to bore everyone with what we do, but if you make a mistake in that process or you miss something in the spec or the contract, you will live or die by that. And so there aren't that many brokers who do regular new builds. And again, it's about the individual broker. There are lots of companies that say they do it, but maybe there are only 1 or 2 brokers within that company who've got the experience. But if I was looking to build a boat, you want to find a broker with that kind of experience individually, because ultimately that's what you're buying.
If you ask 6 shipyards, they say to us, can you bring a client to buy a boat? They all want us. Shipyards, I think it's much better now, but shipyards used to forget the importance of brokers. And as Chris said, if you have a long-term relationship, you can have a lot of influence over what people do. And this industry requires immense investment, time, effort, intellectual stuff that people have learned over a long time. Are we 100% justified the fees that we earn?
Okay. Are there any questions, by the way, from the floor? Does anyone want to get a microphone in their hands and ask an actual question? No.
Who's in control of these things?
It's just magic. It just comes out. It's the AI does it. No one's going to vote on that.
There was a question about AI I saw on the previous thing.
Can we go back to the Slido? Where was that one?
Bottom one for Jan, yeah.
How is AI impacting traditional yacht brokers, especially when dealing with the new generation? Jan, you love the new generation questions, don't you? So let's put that one to you.
Well, it's like with all these things, it's a new tool. It's a tool. It's not deciding it's not decisive for a client to buy a boat because it's AI or it's a tool for marketing. It's a tool to show a product. I don't think it's really we just add it. We use it. We adapt to it. It's like 100 years ago when the fax went out of fashion and we start using emails. We use it. We use whatever we can to explain to our clients what it is that we are selling. And if AI is, we can use AI when we use AI. I don't see it as a threat or something like that.
Chris, you look poised there. Like you've
No, I'm just interested to hear, because I don't know whether that's representing Fraser's or whether it's just you, Jaap. But I mean, I'm personally taking it very seriously in every respect. Oh,
Well, I don't say.
No, I mean,
I
mean, not just as a tool. You know, almost as an agent. You know, it's sort of, it seems to me is right now, of course, it's in its infancy still. It's rapidly improving every day. But I find the whole thing, you know, kind of terrifying, if I'm honest. But the bottom line, going back to what I said very early on, is that you know, having relationships with real people is very important to the end user. And this idea that being private and keeping information out of the public domain, again, is very important to a lot of people, right? You know, in the public eye or very rich people. And so actually the whole AI and the invention of mass data is causing people to retreat back to the sort of analog, you know, relationship-driven, one-on-one, telephone call type relationship. So, but I mean, I'm fascinated, intrigued, and frightened about where AI is going, to be honest.
No, but this is the same thing for me, and it's not my personal or Fraser or whoever. It's in general. We're talking about the whole. It's about relationships. Well, AI or bombarding someone with information which is artificial is not a relationship for me. So therefore, I'm not so. I use it as a tool to make presentations which you discuss with someone in person. So it's not. Maybe for a certain product range like production boats up to 30 meters, it's more generalized and maybe it works for that. But what we discussed, it's the personal relationship. It's not nothing more.
Technology is going to always, technology will empower people to perform better. And so technology can help a lot in terms of delivering information to the broker who can then impart that information to their client. I think one of the problems, in some ways, there's so much information available on the internet nowadays, some of it powered by AI, some of it just generally on the website, on multiple websites. It's disseminating what is accurate and what is inaccurate. And it's, you know, I think AI will, of course, play a part. It does play a part. But it'll still, I don't think you can replace the role of the broker. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon because it is a personal thing.
Yeah, I think there is so much information out there, but I think actually our clients are looking for opinion, you know, experienced, informed opinion, because sometimes they go, I think this is a good idea, is it? And they want, you know, what are the pros and cons of this boat? And you can go through that with them. As I said, everything looks fantastic online because it's supposed to be.
Problem is, Will, do you remember when we said, God, I'd never buy an airline ticket online? What are you talking about? No, I need to talk to the agent. Oh, you're too young.
You're just much
I mean, I
older
remember
than
buying the idea of buying an airline ticket online was crazy. I mean, it was out there, and now, of course, you know.
No, but then you're back again to it's a tool. It facilitates.
Yeah, but it is a tool, right? But you know, if you can get an AI answering the questions that you're answering now. Yeah. Directly on the net, and then it comes up with 5 solutions for you, and you can just press, yeah, I quite like that solution, and then you can literally talk to the captain of Jardra. It's kind of... Yeah.
True. But how can an AI tell you what your experience is by building a boat in this shipyard or that shipyard?
Yeah, sure.
And that's what I mean.
You like the look of that one, don't you?
No, we were just chatting about it earlier.
No, Jamie and I were just talking about, I don't know if you can see the same slides as the bottom one, but yes, no, we've all got a bit of had some recent experience of that when a client gives you a target to achieve and you achieve that by already discounting your fee, and then they go, that's not good enough, I want more. And you're like, well, what's the point in giving a target? So, you know, our businesses don't work if we don't make commission. I know everyone would like to, and I think there was a question which you wanted to talk about, is there a way of selling boats without brokers being involved? And over the last few years, we have seen a few people try auctions, for instance, and they've never really achieved anywhere near what the brokerage model would achieve. And I've seen a few owners decide to sell the boat directly, like with their captain, and put adverts in Boat International. It doesn't work. You know, as a broker, I feel much more comfortable offering boats to my clients that have got a central agency with a trusted broker. And I talk about the individual again, like a broker that I know and trust. The guy is going to give me the right information that's going to guide me as to what I need to do to get the boat bought for my client. And also it offers me some protection. If it's kind of the owner saying, oh yeah, sure, I'll pay you a commission, just go and offer it to all your clients, you go, well, everyone knows you're in the boat. The buyer might find a way to you. So I still think that the brokerage model, if you list your boat with a really well-respected and trusted central agent, you essentially open up the boat to a massive pool of thousands of brokers around the world. And I still think that's the best way. And they're all, in turn, marketing the boat to their client bases. So there is value in that, for sure. You're covering every base.
Probably got time for one or two more. I quite like this question. Collectively, as a brokerage community, what do we need to do to improve on both internally to benefit the industry and externally outside perception? I mean, another way of phrasing that is, if I was to ask the audience what they find most annoying about sales brokers, what do you think they would say?
Do you want to ask someone that question? Seriously. There must be someone, they can put it anonymously.
Anyone got any thoughts? I mean, give us a quick, off the cuff.
It seems to me that the perception is that brokers make too much money and they don't deserve it. That seems to me the bottom line. This is an industry where there's a lot of money at stake. And on some cases, sure, brokers get away with probably more than they're entitled to. Well, entitled to because that's part of the deal, but more than they're worth. But very, very often, and I know I'm a broker, so I would say it, very often, we add much more than we take. And as I say, these buyers, they make their own judgment. I'm not forcing them to buy from me. I do all my work up front. I only get paid when I'm 100% successful. Yeah. That's the only time I get paid. So must be doing something right. It must be worth something to somebody. And very often, in my close clients, okay, occasionally, but mostly my close clients don't even mention my commission. They know what the commission levels are. They know what they're getting into. They engage with me knowing what they're getting into, and they're happy that I make a living out of it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Fully agree.
Yeah, and it all comes down to adding value. Are you adding value? And then your fee is well deserved. Because ultimately, we don't get paid until everyone's happy. The seller's happy with the price, the buyer's happy with the price. And I think the problem is it's a bit like gamblers who only tell you about their successes. I think the other people in the industry only see the sold announcements and stuff. And go, oh, wow, they've done well. Well, you haven't seen all of the wasted trips, so many wasted trips. I've
just been sitting in the Middle East for 7 days without a meeting.
And that's it. So I say to other people who kind of moan about it, I said, you're very welcome to come and work for me on commission only. You pay all your own expenses, and that's commission. They go, you know what, I'm all right with my fixed salary, thank you very much. I think that tells you everything.
I think Chris made a really important point, is people often think, because they see the quantum, they see the numbers, and they think, wow, these brokers are getting paid a lot of money. And of course, there are different businesses here, different sizes, but whatever size of business it is that you're running, it is an expensive business to run. Even the smaller ones, and I know that sometimes people say, well, the big ones charge, but it's expensive to run these business. There's enormous risk that you have to put in, and for every deal you see done, there are lots that haven't happened. And I think one of the other really important things is the brokers, be them large or small, over the last 20 years have played a very, very important part in creating this market, in creating awareness of yachting to a load of clients around the world. And a lot of other people, I think that's often not really appreciated or understood. just how much work, whether you're a big broker doing lots of advertising or you're a smaller broker who's gone on a business trip to a remote place to introduce yachting to people, that requires time, investment, and a huge amount of risk capital. And I think that is the thing that is most poorly understood in our industry. And we were just chatting just before this started about, deals that have fallen over at the 11th hour. We did a deal recently. We worked on it for about 8 months. The legal fees alone for the lawyers were close to €1 million. Everyone got paid. Lawyers got paid, surveyors got paid, people got paid, everybody got paid. We didn't get paid because, as Chris said, we only get paid if it's 100% successful. Not 99%, not 99.5%. 100% success, then we get paid. And I think people often forget that. And hopefully, I'm not sure we can come up with the answer now, but I think the role of the broker needs to be better understood and better portrayed.
Beautiful. What a lovely way to end. Thank you very much, gents, indeed. Fantastic insight, compelling stuff as ever. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.